Hello and welcome to Channels Book Club. I'm Olakunle Kasumu. It's great to be back on the show today. And it's great to be alive. You say that in a country like Nigeria where so many things just go on every day. The last 2 weeks have been difficult for the country. Insurgency, kidnappings, the Twitter saga, of course, and so many, heated politics. But Nigeria is still alive and we're all still alive. It's great to be alive. One of the things that has been at the front burner of discussions for developmental agents and experts and consultants and economists is the issue of infrastructural development. Nigeria has serious infrastructural development deficits. Our guest author for today has written a book that offers a solution to that problem. We'll get to meet with him soon, and after we've introduced him, we will enjoy an interview we had with him. Please stay tuned.
Sam Inengite is an accountant, a finance professional, infrastructure developer, and an author who has worked in Nigeria and the United Kingdom. Inengite has over 20 years' experience in providing financial services to individuals and corporate organizations. He has held managerial positions in capacity building, strategic planning, auditing, and tax planning. Sam is a graduate of Middlesex University, London, UK, and Salford Business School, University of Salford, Manchester, UK. His book, Building Sustainable Public-Private Partnership, explores contemporary ideas and strategies for attracting private capital to help finance public infrastructures through public-private partnerships.
Sam, it's nice to have you on Channels Book Club.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And well done on your book, Building Sustainable Public-Private Partnerships, How to Attract Private Capital to Public Infrastructure. Well, we'll come to this book, but you seem to have very extensive experience in public-private partnership arrangements. What's your story?
My story, I'll start from, first of all, what led me to writing the book. A couple of years ago, precisely in 2014, I was the bursar of a federal university. And the council at the time decided to go into a PPP arrangement because the university wanted to build hostels and all of that. And they felt that was the easiest way to go about it. So we went into it. Unfortunately, the issue ended up in court. Why? Because we did not do something that was very, very significant, but often overlooked in terms of financing projects. We did not assess the character of the contractor or the PPP investor. So it took us a while to realize that the character wasn't enough for us to deal with that participant, that investor. So we made that mistake because we didn't carry out what is called due diligence. So subsequently, I now said to myself, if we had done this in a better way, probably the outcome would have been different.
You wouldn't have gotten into trouble.
Yes. So it became a personal challenge for me to research into what PPP was all about. Don't forget that in 2014, PPP wasn't as widely spoken about as it is today. So I carried out an extensive research, did a master's program on it, did a lot of research, and I now realize that, look, we would have done much better if we had done it the right way. Properly. So that became a motivation for me to research into PPP and to see PPP in a better light.
Right.
So now I am now an advocate of PPP. So that's, for instance, led me into writing a book on PPP.
Okay, I will like you to explain to us, to viewers, what PPP is. But let me read how you defined it here, which, I thought I understood PPP before until I read your definition and got me thinking. So PPP is a long-term contract between the public sector and a private partner providing for the financing construction and operation of a non-financial asset. It's a non-financial asset that actually, shook me up a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, but in layman's language,
Okay.
what is PPP?
In a layman's language, PPP is just an arrangement between a government agency. It could be a local government. In advanced climes, you could have a local government going to such transactions.
Yeah.
It could be a state government, and it could be central government. So a PPP is when a government agency partners with a private investor to provide an asset, and that's the definition that you just read.
Yes.
It could be an asset or a service.
Or a service?
Yes, it could be an asset or a service. So when these parties come together to agree on a long-term arrangement to provide an asset or a service, so that is a PPP.
So what are the most famous PPP projects in Nigeria? Just give us two.
Okay.
That we all know.
Okay.
But it's classic PPP examples.
Okay, I'll give you two. The first one is MM2, Murtala Mohammed Airport 2. It was a PPP arrangement by Courtney Services.
Okay.
And they were given
So in that case, by Courtney, the private...
It was a private investor.
Private investor.
Yes.
And the federal government of Nigeria...
Was the government agency.
The public, yeah.
Yes, was a public party in that arrangement.
Okay.
Yeah, so up till this date, the MM2 is still operational, it's still functional, and it's there for everybody to see.
And it's managed by Courtney.
It's managed by Courtney. So I wouldn't...
So by Courtney brought the funding for MM2?
By Courtney brought the funding, and the federal government provided the necessary land and the basic regulatory supervision of the project. But basically, by Courtney brought the funds into that project.
Okay, and they still manage it?
They are still managing it.
Then the revenue is shared between them and the government?
You see, every PPP has its peculiarities. So I am not privy to the terms of the contract. There are some PPPs where the government gets some kind of revenue on a periodic basis. For instance, like concession agreements. Periodically, you could get some revenue. Okay. But there are other PPP structures that are, for instance, like a build, operate, and transfer PPP scheme. You, as an investor, you run the project for, say, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, as the case may be. And at the end of the tenure of that project, the project gets handed over back to the government. So in the course of that tenure of the transaction, the government may not have periodic revenue. So every case is different. So yes.
In your book, you argue that a country like Nigeria that has serious infrastructural deficits needs PPP badly.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yes. Let me explain from this point of view. If you've been following the financial situation of the country, our debt service obligation as a percentage of the revenue of the country is about 90%. What that means is that for every 10 naira that the federal government generates as revenue, it pays 9 naira to repay its loan obligations.
Whoa.
So by the time you're using 9 naira to 10 naira to pay your loan obligations, you only have only 1 naira left
to spend
on recurrent expenses and capital projects. Now, that 1 naira cannot take you to meeting your recurrent expenditure obligations, not to talk of investing in assets. So when you now look at PPP now gives you an opportunity to say, okay, rather than borrowing further, because if you go the option of borrowing, you are further increasing your debt service obligations. If you look at the current revenue profile of the country, oil revenue is dwindling, so there's very little funds coming from our traditional means, which is like the taxes and the oil revenue. So from those sources, you have very little money coming in. So what other options do you have if you want to invest in infrastructure? It's to invite the private sector. So PPP is about partnering with the private sector, because the private sector provides the funding, the resources that you need. And the beauty of PPP is that it can be a win-win between the public sector and the private sector. The public sector, for instance, at the end of the day, has the assets and provides the service to its people. While for the private investor, they bring their money in, they recover their investment over a period of time, and the asset reverts back to the government. So in that case, the government provides the infrastructure that the people need, and the private sector realizes their return on investment. So it is usually, if well structured.
And the citizens enjoy the infrastructure.
Exactly. So usually, if it's well structured, then it's a win-win for both parties.
Talk to us a bit about what you wrote here about our infrastructural deficit. When I was reading it, I was like cringing. You spoke about the housing deficit. Yes. You spoke about the power deficit. So how serious is it? Therefore, answering the question, how badly do we need PPP?
Yes. If you look at it sector by sector, if you look at the power sector right now, we are generating about 5,000 megawatts of power for a country that needs at least 100,000. If you compare what we are generating to our neighbors like Ghana and South Africa and other African countries, we are like light years behind. No talk of the developed countries of the world, like the Chinas, the USAs, and the UKs of this world. So we are nowhere near there. So in terms of power, we have a major deficit. In the area of housing, the figure quoted there, 17 million shortfall, yes, was several years ago. As we speak, I'm sure that figure is much more than the 20 million deficit in the area of housing. In the area of road infrastructure, the gap between where we should be and where we are right now is about, say, between 40 and 50,000 kilometers of road that will give us a semblance of what a country like Nigeria should have. So wherever you look, whatever sector you look at, we have a major deficit. And unfortunately for us, we are at the point where if we don't do something fast, then the handicap we have in the area of infrastructure will start telling in terms of foreign investors that are coming in. And like you know, I'll give you a few examples. Recently, Twitter, rather than coming to Nigeria with a larger captive market, went to Ghana. Kia Motors and another motor company, quite recently too, rather than coming to Nigeria with a larger market, went to Ghana. So what that tells us, it tells us that if we don't do something about our infrastructure and very fast, the FDIs that have been coming in, foreign direct investments that have been coming in fact, over the last 2-3 years, the figure has been dwindling because capital, the truth of the matter is capital is not sentimental. Yeah. Capital is not emotional. Capital goes to where the environment...
There'll be returns.
There'll be return, and where the environment is conducive enough for that investor to recover his investment. So until we do something about our infrastructure deficits, the FDIs that we've been getting all these years will continue to dwindle. And of course, we'll be going to neighboring countries.
The PPP arrangement makes sense. Investor, bring your money. We provide the legislation required and the environment required, and everybody wins. It seems like a simple, So why is it not working as it ought to be working?
Probably the reason why it's not as popular here as it is in other climes is because of the level of transparency required and the capacity. Because for the public sector, the problem they have is capacity to understand what PPP is all about.
I mean, all the dynamics, the legal framework, the laws, all the business angles to it, finance, capitalization. It's really quite complex.
Yeah, so that's what this book is all about. Because for me, what I say to myself is, if the government wants to get it right. In fact, recently, over the last maybe 1 or 2 years, Mr. President himself has talked about the importance of inviting the private sector to invest in infrastructure. Yeah. The Vice President has spoken about that on a few occasions. The Senate President has spoken about that on a few occasions. And several other, the Minister for Works, and even the aviation and all of that. They've all talked about PPP as an investment concept. However, nobody tells you how to go about it. So what this book does is to provide the how.
Provide the how. And it is really extensive. I mean, you've gone through almost every aspect of PPP here you've touched on, and it's incredible work you have done here. Project financiers, legal framework, the environment, the economy, PPP models, risk factors, benefits and opportunities, success factors, sponsors and lenders. It's incredible. Thank you very much, Sam, for joining us on Channels Book Club.
Thank you.
Yeah, and well done writing this.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you here.
Thank you very much.